The week before my wedding, my future in-laws took my fiancé on a family trip. When he returned, he was distant and said, "I think we should take a break." I just smiled, handed him an envelope, and said, "That's funny because I just got some information about that trip." When he read it, he looked at his parents with so much rage. Have you ever loved someone so much that you didn't see the betrayal, even when it was caressing your face? Lana was 32 and believed she was on the threshold of her most sacred dream, marrying the man she had chosen from the depths of her soul. To many, Adam was perfect. A renowned architect, son of a wealthy family, kind in front of people, with that perfect smile that charmed at parties, but in private, it grew more and more distant. Lana, however, was not naive. She had learned to see in the silences, to read the pauses in a conversation, to decipher what was left unsaid. She lived in Savannah, Georgia, in a small red brick apartment that smelled of lavender and coffee. She was an interior designer, a woman who had built her career from the ground up, with no favors, no inheritance. A woman who had everything, except the acceptance of her fiancé's family. The wedding was just 7 days away. The centerpieces were confirmed, the dress hung like a white promise in the closet, and messages from excited family members kept pouring in. Everything seemed perfect until Rebecca called. "Adam needs a breather before the big day," Rebecca said over the phone without bothering to say hello. She had that polite, cold-as-porcelain voice, filled with silent disdain. "We've decided to take him to Miami for just a few days. Nothing more." Lana held the phone to her ear without responding. Her hands trembled slightly. From the very first day, Rebecca had looked at her as if evaluating whether it was worth the time to get to know her. And Walter, Adam's father, barely spoke, unless it was to boast about business or complain about what he called the moral collapse of the youth. "It is too much to ask, isn't it?" she finally asked, her acidity barely contained. "A week before the wedding? Stress isn't good for anyone, dear. And you, more than anyone, should know that. We don't want an exhausted groom at the altar, do we?" Lana hung up without saying goodbye. Adam arrived that night with his usual cautious smile, as if he already knew he had to soften the inevitable. "It's only for 3 days, he said, leaving his jacket on the back of the sofa. "My mom insisted. And you know how she is." "Oh yes, I know how she is. Manipulative, controlling, classist," she said bluntly. He frowned but didn't interrupt. "And you wanted to go too?" Adam came closer and wrapped his arms around her waist. His hands were cold. "I thought it might be good to disconnect a little. We've been planning this for months. I don't want to get there with my head in a knot." Lana said nothing. She wanted to scream that it was absurd, that no one went on a family trip days before getting married, but she swallowed her words. She forced herself to trust, to believe that the love she defended tooth and nail was still alive in him. Adam left on Thursday morning. He didn't even have breakfast. He left with a light suitcase and a kiss on her cheek. There was no hug, no long look, no phrase like, "I'll miss you." Just a closing door and a silence that fell like a weight on Lana's chest. Throughout that Thursday, she tried to keep herself busy, confirming details with the florist, reviewing the guest list, going to a final dress fitting. No one noticed her anxiety, that knot that slowly grew like a shadow she couldn't ignore. Night came, and with it, the first tear she didn't know the origin of. On Friday, she received a photo of Adam on Instagram, a view of the hotel, drinks by the pool, and the caption, "Recharging before the big leap." No mention of her, no sign that he was about to get married. That night, she dreamed she was at the church and Adam didn't show up. She woke up drenched in sweat, the sheets tangled around her legs, and a choked scream in her throat. On Saturday night, while she tried to watch a movie to distract herself, the phone rang. It was a video call from Chloe, her best friend from college. She lived in Miami, although by chance they both grew up on the same street as kids. Chloe was extroverted, fiery, loyal to a fault. "Is Adam there with you?" Lana asked, trying to sound casual. "Listen to me carefully," Chloe said, lowering her voice as she moved away from what seemed to be a bar. "I'm working, but I had to call you. Your beloved fiancé shouldn't be in bed dreaming of you." "Why do you ask that?" "Because I just saw him. He's in the VIP section of my bar with his parents and a blonde. A blonde in a mini dress and heels that look like knives. And honey, it's not a family get-together." Lana froze. "Are you sure?" "Sure. I saw her touch his leg." He gave her a kiss on the cheek. Rebecca and Walter were laughing as if they were watching a scene from a wedding movie. "It's not normal, Lou. It's not normal." The call was cut off by the noise. Lana let the phone drop onto the table. She felt the floor shift an inch beneath her feet. All that love, all that trust had just been broken. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She got up, walked to the kitchen, took a glass, filled it with wine, and sat in the darkness of her living room. There, between the lights off and her ragged breathing, a decision took root inside her like a poisonous seed. She would not allow herself to be a victim or a fool. Sunday morning, with the sun barely peeking through the blinds, she looked online for a private investigator in Miami. It wasn't the first time she had doubted Adam's family, but she never thought she would go to this extreme. Still, something inside her knew she had to. She sent a message, explained her case, and when the man responded quickly, she said, yes. The money didn't matter. What was at stake was bigger than that. While she waited for the first reports, she remembered so many moments silenced for love. The time Rebecca told her the tablecloths she chose were vulgar. The disapproving look when she mentioned her mother was a retired nurse. The times Adam shrugged when she needed him to defend her. In just 3 days, her vision of love began to crack. Monday afternoon, the first batch of photos arrived. Adam with the blonde, walking through an art gallery. He was smiling, she was holding his arm. Walter was behind them like an escort, Rebecca in front, as if it were all part of a parade she herself had organized. Lana's heart didn't break, it hardened. It was no longer about a wedding, not even about a betrayal. It was an insult, a show staged by a family that always saw her as a passing phase in their son's life. That night, the detective confirmed the young woman's name. Catherine, 26 years old. An occasional model. Nothing in her history indicated a previous relationship with Adam, but there was a very clear connection to Rebecca. They had attended a charity event organized by her 3 months ago. Lana printed every image, organized them in a black folder, added the emails, dates, and locations. Nothing was left to chance. On Tuesday, as the sun disappeared behind the trees of Savannah, Lana looked in the mirror and said something she had never dared to say before. Maybe Adam never loved me, he just tolerated me. And then the poisonous seed bloomed. It wasn't hate, it was something purer. It was clarity. No one who truly loves allows their mother to play with their partner's dignity. On Wednesday night, she received a message from Adam. I'm coming back tomorrow. I can't wait to see you. She read those words with narrowed eyes. Guilt, hypocrisy, shamelessness. She didn't know which emotion to define first, but she did know how to respond. Sure. Coffee at my place. 9 a.m. Short, direct. No hearts, no sweetness. The early morning was long, not because of anxiety, but because of preparation. She rehearsed every phrase, every pause, every look in her mind. She wasn't going to scream. She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to ask for explanations. She was going to expose the truth, like unrolling a scroll full of fire. The next morning, the sun was barely coming through the window when Lana brewed the most bitter coffee she had. She left the folder on the table with a marker pointing to the first page. She dressed in something neutral, neither too elegant nor too sloppy. She wanted to look like someone who had already made up her mind. Adam arrived on time. That surprised her. He was wearing a blue shirt, unbuttoned at the neck, and had a face that feigned tranquility. I missed you, he said, entering without waiting for an invitation. Lana didn't respond. She pointed to the table. Coffee, of course. He sat down, took the cup with both hands, noticed the folder, but didn't ask. The tension in the air was evident, but he seemed to want to ignore it until she spoke. Did you have a good time in Miami? Adam nodded, sipping his coffee. Yes, I rested. It was just what I needed. And Catherine rested too? Adam blinked. The cup barely trembled in his hand. He put it down on the saucer. Catherine. Lana pushed the folder towards him. Open it. He did. The first photo was of the pool, then the boutique, then the kiss on the cheek, then the printed video with the transcription. As he went through the pages, his face changed color. He went from discomfort to bewilderment to fear, until he looked up. What is this? Evidence of the setup, of the farce, of how your family planned to replace me without telling me. I didn't, he stammered. I didn't know there were photos. That's what you're worried about, that there are photos. He closed the folder hard. His expression was a whirlwind of confusion and shame. Nothing happened. I swear. Catherine is just a friend. My mother. Your mother doesn't want me. I knew that. What I didn't know is that you don't respect me either. Adam stood up, walked around the room, put his hands on his head. It wasn't like that. She insisted she came. She told me she needed to think. To think if you were worth marrying after 3 years, after everything we've built. Lana interrupted him. You sat next to her. You smiled at her. You shared dinner, laughs, even a walk through the gallery. Are you going to tell me that's respect? He didn't know what to say. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. She opened it without asking. Rebecca and Walter entered as if the space belonged to them. Are we interrupting? Rebecca asked, although she didn't wait for a reply. Walter stood by the door, looking at his phone. Rebecca walked to the kitchen as if she lived there. We have to review the floral arrangements. We can't leave it until the last minute. When she saw the folder on the table and Adam with a disfigured face, she stopped. What is that? Lana said nothing, just watched as Rebecca approached and read the first page, then the second, then the third. Her face showed no guilt, only annoyance. Oh, please, she said. You're exaggerating. This is not what you think. Lana crossed her arms. It's not what I think. Because it looks exactly like what it is. An ambush, a replacement, a betrayal. Rebecca sighed. She turned to Adam. Make her see reason. This doesn't have to ruin the wedding. Adam didn't speak. His silence was the hardest blow. And in that silence, Lana knew there was no turning back. She had discovered the truth. And now she was the one in control. Because dignity, although battered, is never completely lost. It just waits for the right moment to roar. And that moment had arrived. The silence was so thick you could feel it in your bones. As if the air had stopped the exact moment Rebecca saw the folder on the table and understood she was no longer in control of the narrative. Lana, standing by a chair, didn't look away for a second. There was no tremor in her voice or contained tears. Just the calm of someone who had already hit rock bottom and decided to climb back up alone. Rebecca slowly closed the folder, as if each image was a weight on her fingers. Her lips curved into a sneer of false contempt. This changes nothing, she said, as if talking to a spoiled child. It's normal to meet people before a wedding. Nothing here proves anything inappropriate happened. Adam, still in shock, remained by the window. His face was pale, as if he had suddenly realized that his entire life was built on a crumbling foundation. He had gone through the photos again and again, as if looking for a gentler version of the facts. But the images didn't lie. His mother laughing with Catherine, his father's silent approval, Catherine seeking physical contact, him accepting it. Everything was there, recorded, raw, irrefutable. Do you want me to repeat what you just saw? Lana asked with a dangerous calm. Or do you want us to put the video on the TV and watch it all together? Rebecca turned to her, crossing her arms. Don't be dramatic. You're acting like a victim when you're just a bride with insecurities. That's all. Walter, until then oblivious, looked up from his phone. Let's not make this a tragedy, he said in a grave voice. There's still time to adjust course. Everything can still be fixed. This conversation doesn't have to leave this room. Lana let out a laugh that held no joy. She walked slowly to the kitchen, poured more coffee, and sat down again, maintaining her control. Adjust course, she repeated. You call it that because from where I stand, your course was to get rid of me without even telling me. To change fiancés as if you were changing the menu for a banquet. And on top of that, to come here as if nothing happened, with that list of flowers and seats, as if I were just another variable in your strategy. Adam came closer, trying to intervene, but she raised a hand to stop him. No, you don't speak yet. I'm waiting for your mother to explain why she did this. In full sentences and while looking me in the eye. Rebecca didn't hesitate. She walked slowly to the table and sat across from Lana. Her movements were elegant, studied, as if even in her downfall, her priority was not to lose her composure. I'll be frank, she began. You're not what we expected for Adam. My son deserves a life that is up to his standard. A partner who adds to him, who doesn't drag him into a world of mediocrity. Lana didn't even blink. Mediocrity, she said in the softest voice of the night. I've been working since I was 20. I paid for every penny of my education. I've designed spaces that you probably couldn't even afford to visit without a press pass. And yet, I sat at your table, I smiled at you, I accepted your contempt because I believed your son's love was worth more than your poison. Rebecca leaned forward. It's not my fault you confused tolerance with acceptance. Putting up with you is not the same as loving you. Adam turned sharply. Mom, please. She ignored him. And Catherine, she continued with a sideways smile. Catherine understands what it means to live at this level. She knows how to behave. She doesn't make scenes, she doesn't respond with sarcasm, and she looked at Lana with a hint of disgust. She doesn't brag about coming from the bottom as if it were a merit. Walter sighed, annoyed by the drama. Enough, he grumbled. This isn't a competition between women. It was just a test. Nothing was consummated. There was no infidelity. Lana nodded. A test. Or should we call it reality? Rebecca corrected. Because marriage isn't a fairy tale, dear, it's an investment. And you weren't profitable. Adam approached the table and finally spoke. Mom, that's enough. I had no idea Catherine was going to be on that trip. You told me it was a family getaway. That's all. Rebecca looked at him with contempt. Do you really expect me to believe you didn't like having her around? She asked. Because I didn't see you push her away. I didn't see you distance yourself. He didn't know what to say. Lana stood up. She felt as if she were walking on broken glass, but each step strengthened her. And you, Adam? She asked, looking him directly in the eyes. At what point did you think all this was okay? When you laughed at her jokes? When you walked with her on your arm through the gallery? When you didn't text me for 3 days? He lowered his head. I just wanted to avoid conflict. To maintain peace. Peace? Lana laughed bitterly. Do you know what it costs to maintain peace with someone who allows his mother to try and replace me without even batting an eye? Rebecca, unperturbed, stood up. This conversation is useless. Nothing is lost yet. We can still go ahead. You can go ahead if you accept your place. The place of the decorative wife, the one who smiles in photos, the one who doesn't ask uncomfortable questions. Lana felt her blood boil. And you think I want to marry someone who needs permission to respect me? Walter cleared his throat. What you want or don't want is irrelevant. The wedding is paid for. The guests are confirmed. This conversation is not going to change contracts. We can settle this privately. She looked at him with such intensity that Walter was forced to look away. It's not private anymore. Now it's personal, and I'm not going to be quiet. I'm not going to be another piece on your chessboard. I'm not going to become a shadow so your sun can shine brighter. I'm not even sure he wants to shine. Maybe he just wants to be pushed, directed, held. Adam tried to respond, but his words died in his throat. He had no defense. He only had fear. Fear of losing his mother, his fiancé, the perfect image he had built. Fear of being left alone. And in that fear, he chose silence. Again, Rebecca approached him, adjusting his shirt collar with that almost maternal gesture but loaded with dominance. You don't have to say anything, she whispered. We'll fix it as always. But Lana was no longer the same. In her gaze, there was no pleading, only resolution. I do have something else to say, she said firmly. I have videos, audios, and recordings where your mother is heard telling Catherine that when this wedding was ruined, she and you could start your story. I have records of expenses, flight changes, reservations paid for in your mother's and Catherine's names. And best of all, I have an audience. Rebecca turned, bewildered. What are you saying? Lana took out her phone, turned it on, and showed them the screen. I'm saying that if you think you can drag me into shame, ridicule, and invisibility, you messed with the wrong woman. I'm not going to hide. I'm going to tell this entire story, and everyone will have to face their part. Walter took a step forward for the first time with real alarm. You plan to destroy us? She shook her head. You destroyed yourselves. I'm just going to show you the mirror. The silence returned. This time it wasn't tense. It was final. Rebecca grabbed her purse, adjusted her coat, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned to Lana. You are more dangerous than you look. And you are weaker than you pretend, Lana replied. The door closed. Adam remained standing, not knowing whether he should stay or go. Lana approached him, looking at him one last time. Do you want to know what the worst part of all this is? He didn't answer. That I really loved you with every part of me, and you only loved the idea of having someone who wouldn't contradict you. He opened his mouth, but Lana waved a hand. Don't say anything. I don't want to hear you anymore. Now it's my story, and I'll tell it my way. Adam left without looking back. That night, Lana slept alone, but for the first time in a long time, she slept in peace because the truth no longer weighed on her throat. It was no longer a secret hidden in photos. Now it was a promise, a battle to come. And in that battle, she was no longer afraid. The morning after the confrontation brought no relief, but determination. Lana woke up with heavy eyelids, but a clear mind. Every word from Rebecca, every silence from Adam, every look filled with condescension still echoed within her. She sat on the bed and promised herself something she had never said with such firmness before. This story will not end with them winning. She picked up her cell phone. She had 5 missed calls from Chloe and a message that said, "Call me. It's about her." She dialed without thinking, her heart pounding. Chloe's voice came through like a lightning bolt. Lou, the woman from hell is talking. Catherine has been at the bar all night with a friend, bragging about what she did. I have witnesses. Recordings. She said your wedding was just a formality, that she was being paid to get close to Adam, and that afterward, they would present her as his true fiancé. She's proud, as if she won something. Lana closed her eyes, not in surprise, but because all the pieces were starting to fit together. Doubt no longer had a place. All that was left was to know how much of it Adam had allowed, how much dignity he had sacrificed to remain his mother's obedient little boy. Did she say who hired her? Lana asked, her voice barely a whisper. Of course, Chloe replied. Rebecca said it as if it were a common thing. According to her, Rebecca offered her trips, clothes, some media exposure, promises of fashion events, and if all went well, even the possibility of living with Adam. All in exchange for breaking off the engagement with class. Lana didn't respond immediately. She pressed her forehead against the wall and felt the cold seeping through her skin. Her throat burned, not from pain or helplessness, but from disgust. Chloe didn't wait for her reaction. I'm going to send you the audios. Listen to them. You can't doubt anything anymore. The first audio file arrived a minute later, and there was Catherine, laughing with a voice full of vanity, saying it wasn't that hard to seduce Adam. The difficult part was not making it obvious to the hotel's camera. In another fragment, she was heard boasting about how quickly Rebecca had adopted her as a future daughter-in-law, as if Lana had never existed. She even commented that if everything went as planned, Rebecca had already reserved a trip to Italy with her and Adam after the transition. Lana squeezed her phone so hard her palm hurt. Every word was a knife, but it wasn't wounding her. It was a weapon that sharpened her resolve. Minutes later, she put on a coat, took the folder with the documents, and left without looking back. She called Rebecca from the car. A direct, short call without protocol. I need to see you now. You choose the place, but you do it today. The response was an address sent by message. Rebecca's house in the suburbs where she used to host private dinners with her acquaintances. Lana arrived 40 minutes later. The door was already open. They were waiting for her, as if Rebecca knew she would come with fire on her tongue. She walked in with a firm step. The decor was as pretentious as she remembered. Fake marble, ostentatious chandeliers, a gallery of family portraits that looked like they came from a magazine where sincerity was forbidden. Rebecca was waiting in the living room, sitting with a glass of white wine. Oh my, she said. Such character. I thought you'd take a couple of days to process everything. Lana dropped the folder on the table with a dry thud. Rebecca didn't flinch. How much did you pay her to destroy my life? Rebecca smiled without moving a muscle. You're talking about Catherine. I'm talking about your puppet, the woman you turned into a vessel. How much did you give her to replace me? What is a broken engagement worth to you? Rebecca poured herself more wine. Her tone didn't change. We gave her an incentive, some gifts, access to certain circles. Nothing illegal. Lana looked at her with disbelief. Nothing illegal? You think so? Paying a woman to seduce your son days before he gets married, inviting her on a family trip, giving her promises in exchange for my place. Rebecca shrugged. Most women do the same thing, just without intermediaries. Lana walked toward her. Her voice lowered. You have no idea what you've just done. You didn't just kill a wedding, you killed your son's image. Do you really think anyone will respect him when they find out his mother chose a lover for him? Image can be rebuilt, Rebecca said in a dry tone. Status too. What can't be recovered is lost time. And you, dear, were a bug in his timeline. Lana felt the blow as if she had been slapped. She didn't respond. Not yet. And Adam, she asked then. Did he know? Did he help you? Rebecca took her time to answer. When she did, it was with a coldness that chilled her to the bone. He didn't need to know. He just needed to be open to new possibilities. And he was. Lana closed her eyes, forcing herself to breathe. You understand, don't you? She said finally. That I'm not going to let this go. That I'm going to tell everything. That I have the audios. That Catherine isn't as loyal as you thought. Rebecca laughed, a short, humorless sound. And who's going to believe you? You're the scorned one, the jilted one. Nobody sides with the broken bride. You're the cliché, and no one wants to be part of the cliché. Lana took one more step closer. I'm going to become the most powerful cliché you've ever seen. And when this explodes, when your circles find out what you did, there will be no chandelier or catered event that can give you back the respect you pretended to have. Rebecca stood up, her eyes shining with rage. You don't know who you're dealing with. Neither do you. When Lana left that house, she didn't feel fear. She felt fire. And that kind of certainty that only comes after the deepest betrayal. That same night, Adam came looking for her. He knocked on the door like someone who no longer had a home. She looked at him from the doorway. She didn't let him in. "Did you know you were sold?" she asked bluntly. He frowned. "What?" "Catherine. Your mother. The trip was a whole operation. She admits it. Catherine admits it. I have recordings, photos, and best of all, witnesses. Did you know?" He looked at her with eyes full of a pain that seemed real, but it wasn't enough anymore. "I didn't know. I swear. They told me she was a family friend who happened to be there by chance. And you believed that? With all the gestures, the insinuations, your mother praising her as if she were the Virgin Mary? Did you really think it was a coincidence?" Adam swallowed. He had no answers. "You allowed it," she whispered. "You don't have to have planned it. It was enough that you allowed it." He lowered his gaze. He felt dirty, manipulated, a pawn who never knew he was one. "I made a mistake," he said. "I didn't know how to stop it. It all happened so fast. My mother has always had me tied down. She makes me feel like I owe her everything. And now you realize you lost the one thing you couldn't buy," Lana said. "My respect." He reached out his hand. He wanted to touch her. "Lou, please." She recoiled. "Don't call me that. That name doesn't belong to you anymore." Adam finally understood that he had lost her. And not just her. He lost the idea of himself that he had held onto for so long. He saw in the reflection of his own decisions a small, dependent, fragile man, a boy in a man's body, a pawn on his mother's chessboard. As he walked away down the street, he felt something inside him break, but that break wasn't new. It had just become visible. Lana closed the door. Not with sadness, but with peace, because now she knew the whole truth. And with the truth came strength. Catherine was not the problem. She was the symptom. The real virus was power disguised as family, obedience disguised as love, and fear disguised as loyalty. That night, Lana didn't sleep, but not because of anguish. She stayed awake, planning, because her story was not yet over, and the next move was going to be public and definitive. 2 days later, the event hall smelled of white flowers and freshly varnished wood. Outside, the wind rustled the garlands that still hung from the arch, where in theory, Lana and Adam were supposed to pledge eternal love. Inside, the venue's technicians moved with agility, installing the screen Lana had requested at the last minute. No one questioned the urgency. There was no shortage of money, and her voice, calm and firm, left no room for doubt. Tina, her maid of honor and silent confidant since everything exploded, accompanied her with a serene step. She said nothing, but her gaze was a refuge. Lana had dressed in a simple white ensemble. No lace or shiny fabrics, just clean elegance, as if her presence were a response to everything that was taken from her. At 11 o'clock sharp, the first to arrive was Walter. He walked in as if he owned the place, although his eyes moved cautiously. Rebecca followed behind, wrapped in a faux fur coat, holding her purse with the confidence of someone who believes everything can be controlled with a tone of voice. Adam arrived minutes later, dressed informally, as if he refused to treat the moment with seriousness. He stopped when he saw Lana at the front by the projector, and his eyes revealed a mix of shame and nostalgia. He didn't say hello. He didn't need to. And finally, Catherine appeared. She walked through the door as if attending an award ceremony. A short, tight white dress, lips painted a vibrant red. She walked to one of the tables and sat down as if she already knew that everything revolved around her. Lana watched them all without showing a single hint of weakness. She took the projector remote, activated the first file, and turned around. Just as the first image filled the screen, the small but powerful audience, comprising the traders, gasped. The first slide showed Adam and Catherine walking through the art gallery in Miami, their bodies leaning toward each other. Then came images of the restaurant, the pool, the hotel, of Rebecca laughing while Catherine talked with Walter. Everything was woven together with smooth transitions, as if it were a promotional video for a family trip, except that family didn't include the fiancé. No one spoke, not even breathing heavily. Then, Lana activated the audio, a clip filtered by Chloe recorded in the bar where Catherine had confessed too much. Catherine's voice, unmistakable, floated through the hall. "Rebecca told me that if I could get close enough to Adam, the rest would come naturally, that you were just a phase, that she needed a woman with class, with an image, and that after the show I would have what she promised me, a place, a name, a life with him." Walter squirmed in his seat. For the first time, Rebecca swallowed with difficulty. Adam looked at the floor. Catherine didn't flinch. Lana then approached, paused the video, and looked at them. "Any explanation? Anything you'd like to say?" The silence was like a whip. "That doesn't seem to be enough for you?" she insisted. "To see your mother offer my place to another woman? To hear that same woman brag about her role in the plan? Rebecca stood up. This is ridiculous. You've taken everything out of context. Catherine shrugged, unconcerned. No, she didn't. It's true. I said all of that. You offered it to me. And you know what, Rebecca? If you're going to throw me under the bus, at least admit I was useful. Lana raised an eyebrow. Did she offer you more than fame? Catherine smiled with a disturbing calm. Yes. Secrets. Things Rebecca doesn't want anyone to know. I'm not just a mediocre model with a good figure. Rebecca used me because she knew I had things to lose if I spoke. Rebecca's face paled. Walter turned to her, frowning. What is she talking about? Catherine crossed her legs. I'll tell you, Walter, because it seems your wife hasn't told you everything. The donors club she organizes dinners for, those charity events she promotes, aren't as clean as they seem. Money laundering, fictitious donations, shell accounts. I was there. I saw things. I have screenshots, photos, and if I leave this place with a single scratch on my image, I'm going to become a federal informant. Rebecca took a step forward, her eyes filled with rage. Shut up. Catherine stood up unhurriedly. You do it. Lana watched without blinking. The scene was falling apart in front of her like a sandcastle swallowed by the tide. Rebecca was no longer the impenetrable woman. She was a desperate mother with dirty hands. Walter, stunned, was beginning to realize that his marriage was a facade built on interests and betrayals. Adam finally stood up, approached Lana with tired eyes. This doesn't have to continue. We can end this in peace. You go your way, I'll go mine. No one has to make a scandal. She looked at him for a long time. You know what the saddest part of all this is? That at no point in this story was I your priority. You weren't the one who wanted to fix anything. You weren't the one who stopped your mother. You're only reacting now because everything has come to light. Not out of love, but out of shame. He lowered his head. There was no possible defense. Lana walked to the central table, gathered her papers and her laptop, and took a deep breath. This is the last day you will see me. From now on, everything that comes will be my decision. You will not manipulate me again. You will not silence me. And if any of you dares to try and destroy me, remember that I have nothing to lose. You do. Walter stood up, still processing Catherine's threat. This cannot leave this room. Catherine laughed. Too late. You don't know how many copies I have of everything. Just in case someone has an accident. Rebecca grabbed her purse. Her pride was broken, her plan dismantled, her reputation hanging by a thread as thin as her control. Adam tried to say something else, but Lana had already turned on her heel. Tina also stood up, walking behind her without looking back. When they crossed the hall's threshold, the air hit their faces with a liberating force. On the street, Chloe sighed. I've never seen anything like it. It was perfect. Lana looked at her with serenity. It wasn't revenge. It was the truth. And sometimes the truth is all that's left when everything else burns. That night, Lana didn't cry or celebrate. She just sat on her balcony with a glass of wine and the sound of silence accompanying her like an ally. The war was over, but the best part was about to begin because now she was finally free, and no one was ever going to take that away from her again. Social media burned like a gasoline storm. The event hall where everything had fallen apart was not only a witness to the collapse of a wedding, but also to the start of a public downfall that no one could stop. Chloe, with her wit and sense of justice, had leaked the audios, photos, and documents to a local journalist, not out of revenge, but out of respect for a truth that deserved light. The first publication appeared in the early hours of the next day. A note titled "The Jilted Bride Who Exposed a High Society Farce." It included the video of Rebecca offering Catherine a life with Adam, along with a detailed narration of the plot. The journalist, aware of the emotional weight, used terms like premeditated betrayal, familial manipulation, and emotional bribery. The story spread like a virus, jumping from Facebook groups to Twitter, from Twitter to regional news channels. In less than 24 hours, Savannah was no longer talking about a wedding. It was talking about a silent war won with dignity. Rebecca was the first to feel the consequences. Invitations to formal dinners stopped arriving. The golf club she attended with her usual superiority suspended her membership for image reasons. One of her closest friends posted a stinging comment. I always knew Rebecca played with fire. I just didn't imagine she'd drag her own son into it. Walter, pressured by the unwanted attention and accumulated tension, decided to distance himself. He left with a much younger woman than Rebecca, a former employee from his company, leaving behind the marital facade they had maintained for decades. His departure was not silent. He made it public in an interview with a martyr-like tone, claiming that the lack of boundaries had corrupted his wife's heart. Catherine tried to resist. During the first hours of the scandal, she posted a series of photos on her social media alongside Adam. In one of them, they both appeared at a restaurant with the hashtag engaged. In another, she showed an empty jewelry box, promising happy news soon. But the truth has a language that needs no explanation. The comments started to turn cruel. Phrases like, "How much did you charge to destroy a woman?" and "the paid mistress who wanted to be queen" multiplied. The pressure crushed her. She closed her accounts, deactivated her number, and disappeared from the public scene. No one heard from her again, at least not for a while. Adam, for his part, became an echo of himself. He didn't work. He didn't go out. He spent his days in the apartment he once shared with Lana, staring at the walls as if they might offer him answers. Guilt silently gnawed at him, but his body was the first to cry out. Tremors in his hands, constant fatigue, episodes of confusion. He went to the doctor, believing it was anxiety, stress, the hangover of losing everything. But the tests revealed something much more devastating. Adam had inherited a genetic neuromuscular degenerative disease from his father, something Rebecca had known for years. It was a progressive, not immediately fatal, but devastating condition. They had kept it a secret, hoping it would never manifest. Rebecca believed she could avoid it by controlling his environment, choosing wives, and manipulating emotions, but the body does not obey lies. When Adam received the diagnosis, he wanted to call her, ask for an explanation, hug her like the lost boy he had always been. But Rebecca no longer answered. She had fallen into a state of silent depression. She had locked herself in her house, drawn the curtains, and let the world turn without her. Her arrogance had no escape in the face of the mirror of truth. What was once an unimpeachable woman was now just a shadow walking in a silk robe through hallways where no one knocked on the door anymore. Lana, meanwhile, had chosen silence as her best revenge. She gave no interviews. She posted no hints. She didn't respond to the hundreds of messages of support that came from strangers. She simply returned to her work, reorganized her design studio. She allowed herself the luxury of walking through the city without having to think about flowers, cakes, or seating charts. She began to sleep with the windows open, and, most importantly, she began to recognize herself without rage. It was during one of those new mornings, with the sun entering like a respectful visitor, that she received an unexpected email. It had no subject, just a sender. Catherine.01@gmail.com. The message was short, not a single word of an apology. "I need help. Not for me. For my daughter. I have no one. I don't want her to pay for my mistake. Please." Lana hesitated, not because she held a grudge, but because she knew the limits of her compassion. But something in that last line moved her. The image of a child paying for the mistakes of a desperate mother pierced her soul like a needle. She investigated on her own. Chloe helped. Catherine had a 7-year-old daughter. She had been born with a chronic respiratory problem that required expensive treatments. She had hidden it from the public, from her social media, even from Rebecca. Lana took out her phone, called the best pediatric center in the city, used a pseudonym, requested an evaluation. She sent money through a third party. She wasn't looking for recognition. She just wanted someone in the middle of the disaster to get out unharmed. Catherine never replied. She never said thank you. But weeks later, Lana found out the girl was receiving treatment. That was enough. Adam tried to see her twice. The first time, he showed up at her studio. She didn't open the door. The second time, he sent her a handwritten letter. It was sincere, heartbreaking. He admitted his cowardice. He recognized that he was never a complete man. He said that he now understood what he had lost, and that he wasn't asking for a second chance, only forgiveness. She didn't respond, not because she didn't feel it, but because she understood that some wounds are not healed with letters, some mistakes are not washed away with tears. Chloe, upon reading the letter, muttered with rage, "That man is broken." Lana nodded. "And I'm no longer the woman who picks up the pieces." Life began to settle back into place, not perfectly, but with sincerity. Lana became known for something more than a broken wedding. She was invited to talks, conferences on emotional resilience and female empowerment. Her story inspired many women to break off destructive engagements, to choose truth over appearances. She became a symbol, not of a victim, but of resistance. Meanwhile, Rebecca lived like a ghost. The women who once surrounded her now spoke of her as a warning, the one who tried to replace her daughter-in-law and ended up losing her son. The last name that once opened doors now created distance, and her greatest punishment was not public rejection. It was the certainty that in her attempt to create a perfect lineage, she had destroyed her legacy. The news about Adam's illness didn't take long to circulate. The media treated him with compassion. Some tried to turn him into a martyr, but people don't forget. The truth doesn't change because the body gets sick. Many felt pity, but few offered comfort. Because pain does not erase betrayal. It only wraps it in melancholy. One night, much later, Lana looked at the sky from her balcony and felt something unexpected. Tranquility, not joy, not euphoria, just that calm that comes when the soul is no longer at war. She thought of Catherine, of the child, of Adam, of Rebecca walking alone through her empty mansion. And for the first time, she didn't feel rage. She felt compassion because she understood that some people don't choose the harm they cause. They repeat it, they inherit it, they carry it like a second skin. Lana closed her eyes and was grateful to be free of it, free of a story that could have buried her, but instead made her reborn. Because sometimes the price of ambition is not paid by the one who carries it out, but by the one who refuses to become it. And that was her greatest victory. The air smelled of vanilla and freedom. There were no white flowers, no velvet carpet, no arches decorated with intertwined names. Only warm lights hanging in improvised garlands, half-filled wine glasses, and the echo of an honest laugh floating through the room. It was the date Lana was supposed to get married. The calendar marked the day she once dreamed of as sacred. And yet there was no dress, no vows, no brittle promises. There was something better, a celebration of life. Chloe had convinced her. You're not going to cry in your sheets. You're not going to hold a funeral for what set you free. We're going to celebrate you. How do you celebrate something that wasn't broken, but was rebuilt stronger? Lana initially hesitated. She didn't know if her soul had room for so much emotional exposure. But in the end, she agreed and didn't regret it. The hall where they would gather that night was smaller than the one she had reserved for the wedding, more intimate, more sincere. There were no round tables or centerpieces, just cushions, blankets on the floor, dim lights, and a playlist of songs that didn't speak of eternal love, but of survival. The original cake, the one that had been ordered with so much detail, was taken from the freezer, placed in the center of a low table, and decorated with a single candle. Someone wrote on its surface in white cream the word freedom. Lana didn't know who it was, but she smiled when she saw it. The guests were few, the real ones, the ones who hadn't run away when the story became uncomfortable. Chloe, Tina, her design boss, a neighbor who always lent her sugar and never asked why she cried in the elevator. People who had seen her at her worst and still hugged her as if she were at her best. Music played from an old speaker. Chloe was the first to grab the karaoke microphone and sing a 90s song with delightful clumsiness. She was followed by her friend who sang a country song, making everyone laugh with her dramatic exaggeration. Then they all shouted along to a pop ballad. Lana watched, absorbing every moment. She didn't sing, not yet, she just laughed. And inside, she felt something healing, something finally breaking to let the light in. Later, when the glasses were no longer counted and fatigue began to embrace their bodies, Chloe raised her glass and asked for silence. I just want to say something, she began, her voice cracked by wine and emotion. This woman you see here, this woman not only saved herself, she saved all of us, because she taught us that saying no is also an act of love, and that sometimes the bravest thing is not to follow the plan, but to break everything to write yourself from scratch. Everyone applauded. Lana lowered her head. The tears came, but not with sadness, with relief. At midnight, they brought out the cake. Lana took the knife, plunged it in without ceremony, and cut the first slice. No one asked for the typical toast. Instead, Chloe said, "To the endings that save." And they all raised their glasses. Hours later, when the room was half empty and the music had been replaced by contented sighs, Chloe handed a white envelope to Lana. It had no name written on it, just an unidentified seal. Lana looked at it with curiosity, then opened it calmly. Inside was a letter. She recognized the handwriting instantly. "Lou," it began. "I don't expect you to read this with compassion, only that you read it, because there are things I didn't know how to say when I should have, and now I know there is no going back. I was never brave, not with you or with myself. I grew up believing that pleasing my mother was a form of love, and now I understand that I was just running from myself. I never had your strength that made me fall in love with you, and the same one that ended up driving me away, because while you defended yourself, I hid. I regret not knowing how to protect you. I regret being part of the plan, even by omission. I have been diagnosed with ALS. I can no longer write well. This letter took me days, but I needed you to know that when everything collapsed, the only true thing left in my life was you. I don't want you to forgive me. I just want you to live without that weight, to not carry my guilt with you because you didn't lose. You were set free. I was the one who was left trapped. If you ever look at me again, let it be without hatred, because even in the midst of my cowardice, I loved you in my own way. Twisted, insufficient, but real. Adam. Lana squeezed the paper between her fingers. She didn't cry, she just took a deep breath. Chloe approached, read part of the letter over her shoulder, and said in a low voice, "Are you okay?" She nodded. "He's not evil," she said. "He just never knew how to be good without help. And the help he had destroyed him." She put the letter away, not to treasure it, but to close the chapter. The following weeks slipped by without haste. Lana's story stopped being viral conversation and became a silent legend. An example that some shared in their meetings, their workshops, their talks with friends. The woman who saved herself by saying no. Lana returned to work with more strength. She dedicated herself to community projects. She taught design to women who were leaving toxic relationships. She traveled, walked more, dreamed differently. One Saturday morning, while strolling through a local market, she stopped in front of a toy crown stall. A little girl was crying because her crown had fallen. Lana knelt down, picked it up, and gently placed it back on her head. "Is it better now?" the girl asked. She nodded, still with tears. "You're like a princess," the girl said. Lana smiled. "I'm not. I'm something better. I'm free." And as the girl ran to show her crown to her mother, Lana stood looking at the sky. She wasn't looking for signs or promises. She was just grateful, because there was a kind of love that saves and another that destroys. But the only one that never abandons is the love for oneself, and that was the one she had chosen forever.